Bang! Neeves Knives. I'm Jared, and this is the SG Knives Gripper. Now, this is a prototype for a new model that's coming very soon that's going to be produced by Bestech. But this is also a custom knife that Jason Grant, who is the designer of the knife, is selling as well. Now, I'm going to review this knife as is because it's difficult to review this as the prototype that will be done by Bestech. I know there will be some small changes or even some significant changes, but I'll try to put up as much as I can on the screen for you to read through if you are interested in these custom knives, or maybe even the the production knives that are going to be coming soon. Now, I can't wait to get my hands on the production knife because even though this is a prototype of that, I know they will be very different. You know, from a handmade custom knife to the Bestech production model, it's going to be very, very different. But let's get into this beautiful knife. Let's really talk about this. We have a 3.5-inch blade. It is a full-size knife. It's just under 8 inches total. It is a very fidgety knife, has a lot of forms of deployment, about 165 forms of deployment if you have a good imagination. So we do have a flipper right here, which works very, very well. It only has the one jimping, but because of the leverage point you have, it's very hard to fail. The only way you can fail it is if the front flipper comes around and hits you. But if you move that finger out of the way, it's going to deploy every single time without an issue. It's a very, very good leverage point, and it does work really well. It is a little sharp, but not an issue. Now, the front flipper, also another thing, very reliable. You have the way it sways back right here and it rounds right there, gives you a great point of, basically an area to go past. It's very easy to just go right past it very comfortably, and it really makes that front flipper fly. Now, the jimping they used on the front flipper, I normally don't agree with. I normally want finer jimping. This is the spread apart jimping. But in this case, because of the stone washing that's on this Almax blade, it's tacky. So I think even without the jimping at all, I would be able to deploy it just the same. But I still do prefer the other jimping. Now, I'm not saying that it's really that negative of a thing, and the negative things are at the end of the video. I'm just saying that's a preference. But it still deploys very reliably. You can do all the little tricks with it very easily, and it works great as I mess it up, but it works great. No problems with the front flipper at all. The hole, also very, very good. You can thumb flick it or reverse flick it. Now, the hole is in a good place for the most part. You have a, very easy access right to your middle finger, very easy to deploy. Now, I do notice when I deploy it, my finger does go past this little corner right there every single time. So I feel that every time. Same thing with the thumb. When I go to thumb deploy it, I feel myself hit that every time. Now, I can shoot it straight out to the side like that without hitting it, but I don't find it as satisfying. But I can also kind of go right to the bottom of the hole where I don't go to the top, I go to the bottom, and then I can go right past it. So there are ways to go past it, and it's not that big of a deal. It's not even annoying. I don't even know why I'm bringing it up because it's not really an issue. But reverse flick is great. It has a really good sound to it. Listen to this sound. The acoustics are amazing on this knife. Now, when you unlock it, the lock bar access, there's not really good lock bar access, but, anyways, there's a little chamfer on the side, and when you unlock it, the detent is right there. Look how early that was. It looks like it's still locked up. Now it's locked up. It's so early, you are always past it. As soon as you unlock it, you're over the detent ball. So the detent is nice and early. That's very satisfying for somebody who likes drop shutty action. So, and it is very smooth on the drop. And if you notice when it locks back in, you have a nice little ting. Love that. Very easy also to do left-handed. I don't have no issues doing it left-handed. So just know that it's also reliable left-handed, and you can put your fingers right basically on the lock bar without an issue. So now cutting and, ergos and cutting. So one, it is a straight back, and you do notice that. I mean, it's hard not to. It's very, very straight, and hence the name, the gripper. It is very grippy. It has a lot of frag, so you do notice the frag. The frag is very apparent in your hand. It's very slim, but broad enough to be comfortable. However, you do notice how straight it is, which makes it kind of feel like a sway back. So, you know, whether you like sway backs or not, you know, that's on you, but I notice it a lot. And I even notice this almost feels like it goes up right here just because it's so straight. So I do feel this area in my hand quite a bit when I hold it like this. Now you can always go right over it, right up to the blade, which is very, very nice. This is a nice comfortable grip right here, and it works really good. And we'll get into the cutting here in a second, but just gripping it and holding it, you know, in certain grips, you know, I do notice how grippy it is and how slim it is and also how straight it is. That being said, it's still pretty comfortable. And for reverse grip, man, this is really comfortable because it's so flat or so straight. It's, you know, all the way across your fingers. So you have a lot of leverage pulling backwards with this knife. Now with push cuts, same thing. Because it's a straight back right here, and from here to here is perfectly flat, that distributes all the pressure straight across your hand when you're push cutting. So that's a really good thing for push cutting is, you know, having a nice straight area in your hand. For choking up and slicing and things, you know, you have amazing geometry. This is a very thin hollow grind, and geometry cuts. So being so thin behind the edge, it passes through materials very, very nicely. You know, whether you're slicing or doing push cuts, the blade cuts. Now you might get a little bit of resistance from this stone wash because it is a little tacky, but it still passes through materials just fine. Now where it's going to shine is the utility cuts. I mean, obviously you can see it's a utility cutter, and kind of the beauty of it is you can use it in any grip. So you can grip it from the side. You can grip it from, you know, doing a straight line backwards. You can see your tip very well. You have a ton of leverage. You don't have to lift your hand up very high. You can get right to the tip very easily. You can get up nice and close to the blade when you do it. You know, all the little pinch grips are really good. The fine detail grips, you know, where you're doing little detail work or cutting around things or anything like that is great with this knife. This is basically what the design is for. So you're going to do really good for opening boxes, opening things up, detail work, cutting lines, doing utility cuts, all those things. It will shine. And also, like I said, cutting straps, it'll be really good too. And then the push cuts. Now, as far as the clip and carry goes, the clip works fine, but it's surrounded by grippy because it is the gripper. So all this, you know, frag on the edges, you feel that going in and out of your pocket. So even though the clip works just fine, it's hard to deny all the gripping you feel going in and out of the pocket. You notice it. You know, you notice your pants rubbing on the sides and all of this going into your pocket. So it just is the way the knife is. So it's not that big of a deal, and it's not really horrible to carry or anything, but it is something you notice. Now, like I said, I did hear the clip will be changed. I'm not sure how that will work, whether it'll be better or worse. And the clip works fine on this. It's just, you know, there's a lot of gripping. Now, I did think about, man, I wonder what it'd be like to just knock the area down underneath the clip so that it was nice and flat and put the frag pattern on the clip. Because then you wouldn't even notice that there's a flat area because the frag would be on the clip. I don't know. I thought it just sounded good. Probably wouldn't even work, but it was a cool thought. Now, I did not sharpen this like I normally would you know, a knife. This is a custom, and I believe it is sold at this point, so I don't want to do that to the person without it being requested or anything like that. But, you know, being a Wharncliffe blade, it's going to be a blade shape that you're going to want to hold perfectly flat on the stone. And even when you come off of the stone, you're going to want to make sure that you hold it nice and level. So as you're coming across the stone, you don't want to teeter at all. You want to make sure it stays perfectly flat all the way across the stone. So LMAX steel is a fantastic steel. I love LMAX steel. I'm really happy that he chose LMAX on this. I love LMAX. I like it more than M390. It sharpens up really good, takes a really good edge. You can sharpen it to any grit you want. You can put a low grit, a medium grit, or even an ultra fine grit on it, and it does really good. It does really good at low angles, so you can lay your edge back really fine. It takes a nasty sharp edge, and it holds an edge really well. It's a great stain, corrosion resistant steel, so you're not going to have to worry about rust, or at least you shouldn't. And it maintains pretty good too. So after you've sharpened it and you got your good edge and you've been using it, you'll be able to strop it back fairly easily. Now it's not going to be hyper responsive to a strop like a budget steel or like a more simple steel, but it still should maintain pretty easily, and you should be able to get the fine edge to come back a couple times before you need to resharpen. But all in all, I love LMAX, so I have no issues with LMAX, and you know, as long as it's heat treated good, you know, it's a great steel. And I love the edges it takes. It takes such a nasty sharp edge. Now, some negative things. One, no lock bar access. They did put a little chamfer from each side, and it helps, but it'd be so much better if there was a cutout right here. Just cut it out so I can go right from the side and push it. That would help a lot. I'm really picky about lock bar access, and in this case, it's okay, but it'd be so much better if it had a cutout. Next thing is, you know, this one doesn't have a steel lock bar insert. The production model will, but this one does get lock stick here and there. Now, it's not like it has lock stick every time you deploy it, but every so often you do get some pretty decent lock stick, and sometimes it gets stuck. Sometimes it will actually get stuck, and you have to pull back the blade a little bit and kind of unlock it. Now, that doesn't happen very often. You know, it's every once in a while, but it does happen. Next thing, you know, like I said, it is pretty grippy going in and out of the pocket. It's, you know, there's sometimes, you know, if you want a knife with a lot of frag, you're going to have to deal with the frag. So it just is what it is. Next thing, which I know is going to be changed, or at least I'm not sure if this jimping is going to be changed, but I know the flipper is going to be changed on the production model. Remember, I'm not reviewing this as the production model because that, like I said, it'll be very different. But on this one, you know, it has just this one jimp. It is kind of sharp right there, but it does work very reliably. But the front flipper jimping, like I said before, I don't really like this type of jimping on a front flipper, even though it works so well on this knife. But on other knives, I would never recommend jimping like this, or at least just right here. Like, you can have this jimping all up and down the spine, but then right here, I recommend having the little fine jimping, like jimping kind of like this, just the finer jimping. That works really well. And if you just have it right there at the peak, it works so good. Now, in this case, on this knife, it's fine. Not a big deal. Because it's a custom knife, the grind, I've never seen a custom knife with an even grind. So it is going to be off from, you know, one spot to another, and probably even from one side to another. That's custom knives for you. I've personally never seen one that was perfectly even. I've seen close, but never perfect. So that's just a custom knife. It's what you get into when you deal with custom knives. So the production will probably be a lot different in that regard. But on this one, you know, you'll notice a little bit of variation, you know, from right here to right here to right here. It's still nice and thin all the way across. It's not an issue. Now, the last thing, it's very straight. So this is straight, all the way straight. So you notice that quite a bit. It feels like a sway back. There's times where this feels like it's being pushed up into my hand, you know, and in some ways it's good because you have such a good balancing point, you know, where it's like you can almost like, it has leverage from your finger to your hand really good because of that leverage point, you know, but I feels like it sways back a little bit. Now, the next thing is the blade feels short for the handle. The handle, when I'm holding it, I can't help but feel like the blade should be this tall. Like that, instead of my finger being here, it should be right here. And then the blade should be right here, you know, and it's because it's perfectly straight. And since it's perfectly straight, they did take advantage of as much blade as they could put into the handle. They took up all the room they could possibly take up. So it's not like they have the ability to make it broader, but I can't help but wish it was a little bit, just because it's straight. You know, when it's straight like that, I don't know. Maybe I just wish the blade was even just a little bit taller, and a little bit would go a long way. But I do feel like my finger kind of goes backwards a little bit in my hand. Now, is it that big of a deal? No. Do you get used to it? Absolutely. It's not a big deal at all. I'm just, giving my opinions on the design itself being so straight, which I love straight backs. So, this is something that you have to deal with a straight back. But usually with straight backs, there's usually a little bit of variation. Usually a straight back is straight at this point, and then from here it kind of bends down. Or it'll be almost perfectly straight with a little bit of taper. In this case, we are perfectly straight. So you do notice that. Is it a big deal? No. Now, little details I really like about this thing. I love that there's so many forms of deployment. I love that they didn't chamfer the hell out of this hole. So the hole has a nice good edge on it for you to flick. The leverage you get in this flipper tab is also really good. It's so reliable. And I love that you can get right past even if I'm up here like this, I can deploy it. In a lot of cases, when you hold really up high on a front flipper, it hits you and won't deploy. This case, you can easily do it. So it makes it even extra fidgety. I love the look of it, man. It just looks mean. It looks aggressive. It looks like it wants to cut something. It looks badass. And, a knife can be perfect, but if that looks dumb, I don't like it. So the looks on this thing really take it up a notch for sure. It looks so badass. But all in all, I think it's an awesome knife. I'm so glad I got to check it out, and I can't wait for the production model, because I do think some of the little details that could take this thing over the top might be hit on the production model. With this being not only a custom and a prototype, you have the variations to change on the production model, and the machinery and the tooling and all of that a production company can offer more than a custom knife company. But SG Knives, I'm so glad I finally got to try one of their knives, because I have been drooling over SG Knives for a very, very long time. So shout out to Jason Grant for sending this to me. I love you guys. Thank you guys for watching. Peace.